Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'll be talking about effective speech. Speech can be defined as an act of communicating by speaking. Effective speech is one that successfully carries across the message intended to an audience by speaking. Now, obviously, to have your speech effective, you have to be prepared. Now, how do you prepare adequately to make your speech effective? There are two major components to this. The first thing is you have to know your audience. What kind of people will you be speaking with? Are these very highly educated people, technocrats in their field, or are you talking to laymen? You want to know, are these very young people? Are they youngsters, or are they relatively elderly people? You want to know, are they people of high socioeconomic status or relatively lower socioeconomic status? Is it a male audience? Is it a female audience? Or is it a mixed audience? These will necessarily guide the content of your speech as well as the manner in which you deliver your speech. Now, also, you need to know what kind of topic it is that you're going to be delivering. You need to know, about the topic. It's very important to research your topic properly so that you can deliver it effectively. Now, knowing this and knowing your audience helps you to decide what is it that this audience wants from you. Are they just looking for information, or are they waiting to be persuaded in a certain direction? Or indeed, are they just there for the entertainment? So all these will guide the preparation of your speech. Now let's talk about speech delivery. There are various methods people have employed to deliver speeches. But by far the most successful, it would seem, is the extemporal way of delivering speeches. Now, what does this mean? Extemporal speech delivery just means that the major thrust of your speech is outlined in point form, and then you, the speaker, just tends to expatiate on each point. For instance, if you are using multimedia or indeed just a sheet of paper, you can just have your points jotted down, and then you pick them one by one, and the audience can easily follow you as you expatiate on it. This is quite different from having your speech all written out on a piece of paper, and then you have your face buried in the paper and you're just reading out continuously. This tends to be very boring and your audience is likely to fall asleep. So the extemporal speech making seems to be the most successful to be effective. We're talking about being effective. Now, there are certain principles that this form of speech delivery works on. Three basic principles: the principle of repetition, principle of clarity of speech, and the principle of simplicity of language. Now let's talk about repetition. Now, you would imagine that if a person was reading a book and he wasn't clear about a point, he would go back to the page and then read it again. But not so for speech delivery, because you're speaking and they're listening to you and you're moving away from one point and moving to the next point. Therefore, repetition becomes important. It's important that, as you know, every speech has a body. It has an introduction, a body, and a closing. So it's very important for you to keep repeating your main point. Give it a good mention in the introduction, talk about it again during the body, and then conclude with it. So it sticks in the mind of the people listening to you, and they take it away as the main message. Now, the fact that repetition is important is buttressed by a narration from Anas, radiallahu anha, who said that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would repeat the things that he said like 3 times, just to be sure that people grasped it. And indeed, when he meets a party of people, he would greet them and he would make sure he repeats the salutation 3 times. So we can see the importance of repetition. Like I said, concerning repetition, we all know that in the Quran, the Quran is full of warnings, and we know that Allah continues to warn us. You see the same sentences repeated over and over from chapter to chapter. This is just to remind us we're a very forgetful lot, and He knows because He created us. So He keeps telling us, He keeps enjoining us to worship me, do what is good and leave what is bad. He keeps saying it, protect yourself from the fire. He keeps saying it over and over again. So these are all examples of repetition. It abounds in the Quran. There's all over the place repetition about doing good, enjoying that is good, and forbidding that is evil. And so repetition, Allah had recognized, because He was the creator of all, that repetition would be useful for us. So it's good for us to take this home with us. Now, clarity of speech is the second principle. Now, what does this mean? It means you should be able to explain and outline your speech in such a way that even your audience can logically follow your points, pick out what's important, and therefore grasp the meaning of what you're trying to tell them. Now, this includes being able to explain your main points. For instance, if you needed to stress on a certain issue, there are various ways you can do it. You could pause, because when you're giving a speech and you pause, people wait to listen to what next you have to say. Then you can say something important. Or you could stress on your words. Perhaps if you were speaking in a relatively quiet voice, you could suddenly put some stress on the pronunciation, and then they would listen up. Or you could use phrases that call attention. Things like critical issues include, and they'd listen to you. Or you could say, most importantly, and then they would perk up and listen to what you have to say. So those are ways of identifying important things and putting it across to your audience. So now, clarity of speech also entails, parts of clarity of speech includes the volume of your speaking. You must make sure you speak in a loud voice so you can carry everyone along. Hopefully you would have some audio aid like a loudspeaker so everyone can hear you anyway. And then speak slowly. Don't speak so fast, otherwise some people will be left behind. Sometimes you actually see people when they're enjoying a presentation, they're jotting down. So if you're going too fast, they tend to miss certain points and then they might lose interest. Also, you have to be able to articulate what you're saying in good vocabulary, whatever language you're using. This is very important. Now, the third principle of extemporal speech giving is simplicity of your language. As much as possible, try to avoid using highfalutin jargon, because some people are just going to get lost. Unless, of course, if you're in a very highly technical gathering where you have technical experts and let's say you're in a medical conference, for instance, you can go ahead and your audience are medical people. You can go ahead and use all the technical jargon, they will understand. But if this is a mixed crowd, it's only fair to carry everyone along, to break it down in simple language everyone can understand. As much as possible, try to speak in the first person. I, we. That tends to keep you connected with your audience. Simplicity is also buttressed by a saying, a narration from the wife of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha, who related that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would always say what he wants to say in the most simple words. That ensured that those who were listening to him fully understood what he was talking about. Now, this is very important. Sometimes we hear people giving sermons or just quoting from the Quran or trying to pass a message, and then they're just speaking in Arabic to a crowd. Sometimes I see sermons being given totally in Arabic in this country to a mixed crowd. Less than 5% of those people really understand Arabic. So it's important to know that you can use another language. Your intention anyway is to get the message across to your crowd. If it was an strictly Arabic speaking crowd, that's fine. But if it's a mixed crowd, then you should use the most simple words. Say it in English so people can understand, what you're trying to say. So this is all very important. The same applies to many other facets of life. Try to be as simple as you can. Carry as many people as you can along with you. Other factors that are important when you're talking about speaking effectively are things like eye contact. Try to maintain eye contact with your crowd. Don't back them, otherwise you're leaving them behind. Don't cross your arms on the stage or walk nervously or gesticulate very wildly. Otherwise, they're really looking at your theatrics and they're not really listening to what you're saying. So it's important. Your body language, watch your body language. We've talked about gesticulation. We've talked about walking up and down hurriedly across the stage. We've talked about backing them and crossing your arms. That's important. Attention span. You need to know that people don't have a very long attention span. So you have to be able to keep your audience listening. Now, as much as possible, keep your speech as short as it can be. Now, if you find your speech is inadvertently long, try to punctuate it with sensible jokes that people can laugh at, because that's going to create a lighter mood. And often, when people have had a good laugh, they are awake again and they're ready to take more of what you have to say. So all this is important. Now, I'd like to relate all that we've said to the issue of dawah. Dawah, as we know, is calling people to the way of Islam, and it's a duty incumbent upon every single Muslim. You know the truth, you practice the truth, you must invite others to the truth. Now, this is very important. No other time are we called upon to give effective speech as when we're doing dawah. Now, we know that the principles don't change. You want to do dawah, you need to know your audience, like we say. Who am I speaking with? Are you speaking with someone who has absolutely no idea that God exists? Is he an atheist or an agnostic? Or are you speaking with someone who does believe in God but who is confused about whom God really is? Ask questions that can lead you. You could say, what's your idea about God? What are your issues concerning God? And then the person might say, oh, I don't believe in God. Or the person might say, oh, I do believe in God. There's three of them, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Right. Now you know where to start from. It's very important that you know whom you're speaking with. That's very important. Know your topic. Basically, you want to do dawah. The central message is monotheism. Therefore, you must know something reasonable about monotheism. Otherwise, you can't get your message across. So that's important. The other thing I want to call to attention is that we're enjoined to call people to Islam with good manners, with kind speech, and with kind words. So we should be very patient, even though we might be firmly insistent, but we should know that it's only by kind, patient speech that we can get people to really listen to us and focus on what we're saying and then think that we're making sense. So, in summary, we've been talking about effective speech. We have said that we need to be very prepared and that we need to deliver speech in the most effective manner that we can, because that will ensure that our message is gotten across to the audience, which is really the definition of effective. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.